Hello and welcome to this video. Here I will be going through how to use the unit by unit property investment plan for financial freedom calculator. This is available on PropertAdvice.ae along with other useful calculators for property investment in Dubai. Now, if you haven't already seen my video explaining this whole idea of financial freedom through property, please check that out first. If you're ready to use the calculator though, this one will show you how to use it and how to understand all the cells and everything. Now, the first thing we need to do here is simply open this file, and there'll be a link to it in the description, and you can create a copy, your own copy of this sheet. It's not shared with me or anyone else. It's simple. It's a simple Google Sheet. You can also download it as an Excel file if you prefer. Now in here we've got these white boxes, and they're the only boxes you need to enter any data into. Everything else should calculate itself for you. So the unit price, now as mentioned in the previous video, we want to stick to smaller units, but a number of them. There's a few reasons why, and I'll explain that a bit as we go as well. But we are going to assume first that we can buy a unit, including all of the buying fees, for around 500,000 dirhams in today's money. That would be a studio apartment, for example. I've also used a similar example in my property investment calculator, which is for typical property buy-to-let investment. Then the net yield, again, from that calculator would be somewhere in the region of 7%. Which means from one property, we're going to get 35,000 dirhams a year in actual cash back into our account every year. Now, I'm going to get to these two a little bit later. We don't actually need to enter them in order to run the calculator. The next one is the important one. That is your desired monthly retirement income. So how much money do you feel in today's money that you would want for your retirement? So basically, how much money do you want every month for the rest of your life when you retire? But you've got to think of it as today's money, not the inflated rates that you might actually find when you retire. So let's say I'm going to use the example from my last video, which was 15,000, and we do need to enter an age. So what's our current age? Well, again, from the example video, I used this pretend person called Brian who wants to retire at around age 50, but I will just stick to 30 years here. And then life expectancy, a little bit awkward to think of this perhaps, but I would just go for 100 years just to be safe there. So with just this amount of data, we can create a plan really quickly using this calculator. So stage one, understanding your requirement and you're buying your first unit. So in this scenario, you would go ahead and buy this unit now. You would need, so to understand your requirement though, you would need 180,000 dirhams per year back from your eventual investments. That means you would need around 5 units. So it's calculated based on these typical returns. You would actually need to eventually buy 5 units. And you're going to buy your first one age 30, which is essentially today. Stage 2, this is where it gets going, and you're going to start buying all of those other units over time. Now, with just the rent from the first unit, you'll be able to buy your second unit after 16 years. So that assumes you've just bought one unit and you've allowed it to, you've used the rent from that one unit to pay for the next one, and that would take about 16 years. You would, in this scenario, you'd also buy your final unit and retire after 32 years. So if you have a look over on the right, we do have this year by year results table. So year one, we're going to make 35,000 dirhams, and we're going to put it into our savings pot essentially. Year two, another 35,000 dirhams, so that grows to 70. Year three, and so on and so on. So eventually in year 16, our total value of our pot has gone over 500,000, or actually it's at the end of year 15, it's gone over 500,000, which means we can buy the second unit. Okay, so now we've got 2 units and we've got double the rent from those 2 units. And that continues for a further few years. Interestingly, of course, the years drop significantly because we've now got 2 units paying us rent, and so on. And then it gets up to 3 years, 3 units, then 4 units, 5 units, and so on. Now, at this point in time, the retirement age would be 62 years. Okay, so that's not bad actually, considering if you start this when you're 30 and you've just bought 1 apartment, and now you can basically retire with 15,000 dirhams a month in 32 years time. Now that may be a bit scary for some of us, so let's try and reduce that figure, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. At this point in time, the total rent from your total units will become 175,000, so quite close to what we need, which is actually 14,500 dirhams a month. But of course, these are all approximate figures, and the property value alone at that point, so if you just didn't rent anything and you just sold all these units in the end, that the total amount of money there would last you about 14 years. Now, we do actually need to have income for 38 years, and therefore this next part I'll explain a bit as we go. But let's try and get this number down, because as I said with Brian's example, he wanted to basically do this investment for about 20 years, so essentially retire in 20 years time, not in 32. So what does he need to do different in order to get there? Well, it's adding a monthly savings commitment as well. So if we go and add, let's say, just 1,000 dirhams a month, you see this number drops significantly. Okay, so it went from 62, I believe, to 56. Okay, so already 6 years better. Now, what that's done is, if you look in the table, not only are we adding the rent, we're also adding an extra 12,000 dirhams a year in savings, and then that obviously grows your portfolio a little bit quicker. So you still get to those 5 units, but you get it in 26 years instead. Now, I believe before, when I calculated it, we needed about 2,600 a month in order to get there. So that's almost at the right point. But don't forget, at multiple points throughout this process, you're going to have a bank account with, hundreds of thousands of dirhams in it. So why not actually use a bit of interest to help you along as well? So this is where this additional interest part comes in. So if we simply add, even a simple interest, let's go for 3%. Okay, so even just 3% will make some sort of difference, perhaps 4%. Okay, we need 4% in order to get another year off our deal here. So in this scenario, you're going to buy your first unit, you're going to buy your second unit after just 9 years, and then you're going to buy your 5th unit after 20 years, and that's the point where you'll reach this financial freedom. So if we're happy with this setup, let's have a look at some of the other options available. So in this scenario, Brian has of course started this process age 30, he is retiring age 50, and he will need to have income for another 50 years because of his life expectancy here. Now, I'll come back to this units to reserve for kids at the end bit in a minute, because this is one extra bonus sort of cell that you can type some numbers into. But essentially, his total retirement fund amount required, again in today's money, would be 9 million dirhams. That will sustain his life for 50 years at this at the sort of income required. Now, the total generated from rent over this time period is going to be 8.75 million dirhams. So that is the total rent made over 50 years of all his 5 properties. Now, the total final property value is going to be 2.5 million. Again, don't forget, all of this is in today's money, so that total property value will likely be much higher. And then finally, the grand total money made by end of life is 11,250,000 dirhams. So obviously this number is quite a lot bigger than what he actually needs to retire. Okay, now if Brian was to follow these steps, and perhaps he didn't have children, or he didn't want to reserve any units or any money for anyone else, what he could do is actually start selling off some of these properties and get some of this value back in his later years. So in this table, over time, we are starting with one unit, we're then buying the next one, we're then buying the next one, we're then buying the next one, and so on. If you flip that, and on the other side of when you're actually using these properties to pay you back, towards the end of your life, perhaps when you're 60 or 70, you might sell 1 or 2 units and then just have that bank of cash as well to spend through your retirement. Now, if Brian was to do this and actually periodically sell his units throughout his retirement as well, so he essentially leaves with nothing, the actual adjusted monthly income for him will be a bit higher. It'll be 18,750, because that's the rent of the units plus the value as well in the end. Now, some of you watching, I'm sure, would like to reserve some of this for your children in the future. I mean, you could just reserve all of it and essentially gift somebody 2.5 million dirhams worth of property when you pass away. If not, and you want to reserve just a few, well, you can type in, let's say, 2 units. That leaves 1 million dirhams worth of property to your children, which is the most likely recipient. That's why I mentioned kids here. But that will also adjust, of course, your monthly income, including the property value, down to 17. Either way, it is higher than what you originally set out to do. So this is a nice cushion for any problems or any, property issues that you might come across through that time, or even you may have that opportunity to sell some of those units and replace them with fresher units as you go. Either way, this should basically conclude everything you need to know about this calculator. Obviously, if you have a higher requirement, you may end up increasing the amount of time it takes for you to reach that goal. But then again, you can also have a play with this monthly savings commitment. So let's say, here's another scenario where someone's a bit older. Let's say you're like 36 and you would like 20,000 dirhams a month when you retire. You can perhaps get 5% on your savings, and you are sticking with the same type of unit. Now, in this scenario, it would take you 25 years, adding 2,600. You could actually perhaps boost that up to 5,000, and we're back at 20 years again. And actually, even reserving 2 units for our future kids, then you've got the equivalent of 25,000 in reality, including that value from the property, because you've ended up with 7 units valued at 3.5 million. And if we divide it all over the 44 years of retirement, well, that's what we get. So actually, even if you actually only need 20,000, you're actually getting 5,000 more, so about 25% more. We can start to reduce this figure. So let's go for 18. Okay, so that's a bit closer to what we were actually wanting originally. That means we only really need 6 units, and we can do this whole process in 18 years with these conditions. I know this is quite a lot to take in perhaps, but I've worked quite hard to try and make it as simple as possible, leaving only a few bits of data for you guys to use. Have a look at it, have a play with it, let me know what you think. And over on the right, don't forget your year-by-year results. And something quite interesting happens when I realized this is, as you make more rent from more units, it gets to a point. So here it was about 18 years. So if we go down to 18, so this is where we've just bought our 6th unit. Now notice how quickly those units start to accumulate. So in year 19, we've still got 6. In year 20, we'd have 7. In year 21, we'd have 8. And then further down the list, we're buying 1 unit every single year if we continue it. So it is really exponential, the growth in this situation. And the more units you accumulate, the more diversified your portfolio will be, and the easier you will manage all of potential problems in the future. So yes, you can race to a quicker retirement here, but you can also build in some sort of fail-safes in that You can buy a few extra units over the last few years just before you actually find this financial freedom stage, and it will certainly help you out later on. Right guys, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe for any updates, and do let me know what you think in the comments, and I wish you all the best with your property investment journey.